My name is John Doyle, and I am a poor but honest man. And right now, I'm about to make my Toronto mic debut.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto, where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto, where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto, like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto.
Welcome to episode 1822 of Toronto Mic'd, an award-winning podcast proudly brought to you by retrofestive.ca, Canada's pop culture and Christmas store. Save 10% with the promo code FOTM for a limited time. Great Lakes Brewery. Order online at greatlakesbeer.com for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Visit palmapasta.com for more. Fusion Corp's own Nick Iones. He's the host of Building Toronto Skyline and Building Success, two podcasts you ought to listen to. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic'd debut, it's John Doyle. Great to meet you, John Doyle.
Very nice to be here, Mike. It's actually an honor, considering all of the great names you've had here.
But enough about Bill Brio.
Oh, Bill Brio. Bill is an old friend of mine, a dear friend, and I admire Bill a lot. He's still going with his podcast, Brio TV Online. It's just that he and his partner Sandra have moved way out of town.
Orangeville, maybe? Is it Orangeville?
Shelburne, somewhere out there in the wilds.
Because he grew up near Cloverdale Mall, because he went to Michael Power High School a bit before I got there, but we were both graduates of Michael Power High School. So I know he's an Etobicoke guy, but you're right, he has moved up to Orangeville or something like that. Georgetown, maybe. Somewhere up there. But Bill Brio is, still going strong, because he just put together a little video about, and I'm of a vintage where I completely missed this, but there was a Rocket Ship 7, or I think that's what it's called, out of Buffalo. When I was growing up, this did not exist, but it would be like nostalgia that I think baby boomers could hook to their veins, and Bill put together a nice video about that. But you didn't grow up around here, did you?
No, I did not. So yeah, that would be
that one.
Way before my time watching TV in Canada. No, I was born and raised in Ireland. I came to Canada in 1980. I came here as a student, actually. I went to York University. Long story short, those were kind of desperate days in Ireland. The economy was a shambles. The troubles in the north were bleeding into the south where I lived. I done a university degree. My professors at the time encouraged me to go further, do graduate studies, but suggested that I leave Ireland, go to the UK, the US, Canada.
Right.
So I spent some time looking into that and writing this is before the internet, when you actually had to write things and type things.
Oh, I remember, John. I remember.
So the nicest and most engaged response I got was actually from York University here in Toronto. So based on their interest in and support for me, I decided to come to Canada and land in Toronto.
So, it's funny. I actually thought you went to University of Toronto, but you're telling me you went to York.
I did, yes. And that was part of the adventure. At that time, York was it was just as remote as it is now, but these days there's a subway that goes there.
Right.
Back in those days, it wasn't.
Well, back in those days, Black Creek Pioneer Village wasn't just like a historical site. That's just how they rolled up there.
Yeah, I York was smaller. It was remote. It was cold. I think you went to Wilson Station and then got in hope that you got a bus to York U. I lived on campus for quite a while. That was an interesting part of the adventure too. I mean, that's your introduction to a Canadian winter is on the York U campus, in November, December, January. But it was fun too because there were a few thousand people living on that campus, and there were several bars. There were always things going on weekends. So yeah, it wasn't total hardship.
And I'm curious, what were winters like in Ireland? Like, so you came to the door now, and it's getting kind of blustery out there. It's windy. I can see some snowflakes. But of course, this is Toronto in December. What would you expect? But what were winters like in Ireland?
Well, they still are, because I spent a lot of last winter in Ireland. My mother was ill and I was visiting a lot. It gets cold. It rarely snows except for on top of the mountains. It's cold, it's wet, it's windy. Sometimes it doesn't become fully light until 8:30 or 9 in the morning. And by 3:30 or 4, it's dark again.
Right.
And that is one of the striking things about winter in Ireland is there's so little light. It can be, a bit disorienting.
Well, if you suffer from a seasonal affective disorder, that might not be a good landing spot for you.
Well, there would be a lot of depressed people in Ireland, I think.
Well, listen, you said cold and wet, and that's I feel like this is Pee-wee's Playhouse. You said that's the magic word. So we have to crack open our Great Lakes beer here, John. So we're going to get into it. You have a premium lager there, but do it right on the mic. So right in front of that thing, if you can. Here you go. Okay. That's Irish crickets. That's what we call that.
Sounded good.
And I'll crack open my burst. So Great Lakes, thank you for sending over the fresh craft beer. And John, you're going to take some fresh craft beer home with you today, courtesy of Great Lakes.
Just a perfect time of the year to bring home some beer.
Well, let me not stop there. So literally 2 minutes before you arrived, Palma Pasta arrived with lasagna. It's in my freezer right now. They sent over a large lasagna for you to take home. Palma Pasta.
Oh, excellent. Oh, my God.
Did Bill give you the heads up? I'm curious. Did Bill say, hey, if you do Toronto Mike, remember you're going to get lasagna and beer?
No, he didn't. No, I occasionally in touch with Bill since he moved so far away, but I don't see him as often as I used to.
I'm going to pump my own tires here, John, before we get to know you better. This only happened last night, so this is very fresh news. So we're talking now, it's about, 2:23 p.m. on December 19th, 2025. Late last night, I was just, doing my thing, and suddenly I started getting congratulatory notes. So I guess this was around 9 p.m. Unbeknownst to me, the Canadian Podcast Awards were taking place. It was a virtual event. And I won I feel like I'm in A Christmas Story now. I won a major award. So, John, I'm just going to play this clip I pulled from the live feed on YouTube. It's not too long here. So this is what happened last night.
And the winner is Toronto Mic'd.
Wow, this is an incredible honor. I thought being nominated was rad enough, but it turns out winning is way better than just being nominated. This is awesome. So, Outstanding News and Current Affairs Series. What a heavy category. Toronto Mic'd, man, what a labor of love this has been. Thanks to the Academy, thanks to the listenership, and thanks to everybody who voted for me. I am truly honored and humbled. Thank you.
Presenting Outstanding Science Series.
So, John, what happened is they told all nominees to submit like a acceptance speech. So I said months ago, I recorded that and sent it over. It wasn't scripted. Obviously, you can tell that wasn't scripted. But yeah, I completely forgot. But that happened last night. So I won this major award from the Canadian Podcast Awards.
Congratulations, Mike, and well-deserved. Enjoy every minute
of
it.
Oh, thank you. Before I won, I was like poo-pooing the whole thing. Like, oh, who cares? What is this? And then once you win, you're like, oh, this is the most important thing in the history of the world. That's how it works.
I haven't won a lot of awards myself, so, you enjoy it.
Well, here, you just opened the door once again, Mr. Doyle, because you I understand, and you can tell me if this is true. You won a gold medal for debating skills in the Gaelic language. Is this true or false?
It is true, yes. My father, especially, early in my childhood and teenage years and that, my father was a proponent of bringing the Irish language back into life in Ireland. He was a member of an organization that, proposed that, promoted it. My father actually had a career in community theatre, which was taken very seriously at that time in Ireland, as an actor in Irish language plays, and he won awards for his work. At that time, yes, my father encouraged me to learn the Irish language, and he encouraged me to do things like enter debating competitions and speak in the Irish language. And yes, I did win, I think, a gold medal of sorts for arguing in the old language. Can
you speak any Gaelic today?
Very little. It diminished over the years. I would say I can talk, pidgin. Irish these days, but I still enjoy the Irish language. It's a fascinating language. They say, and it may well be a myth, but that Indigenous people in the north have like 50 words for snow.
Right.
Well, in Ireland, they have about 90, in the Irish language, they have about 90 words for rain. They also have 32 words for field.
Wow. Okay, now how many of those 92 words for rain can you ring off the top of your head?
Oh, probably one. Tasha Corboshte.
Okay.
It's pouring out.
I'll have to confirm that later with Ashley McIsaac had a hit in this country. Ashley McIsaac is a fiddler from Cape Breton, and he was on this program earlier this year. Kind of a wild episode, actually. But he had a hit he did a cover, I guess it's a traditional song, Sleeping Maggie. And
I know it well.
And it was in Gaelic, like the woman who did the vocals, because he's a fiddler, he's doing the fiddle, and she sang it in Gaelic.
That would mostly be Scots Gaelic, okay. The Scottish version of the Irish language, which in Cape Breton, stayed alive. And there are quite a few people who speak it as their first or second language.
Yeah, when you do travel down east, it does sound like maybe you took a trip to Ireland. So it absolutely being preserved there, which is very cool. Ashley McIsaac in the news yesterday because his AI is spreading lies about him and it's costing him gigs. So it'll be interesting. I don't know your take. We're going to get into it, but since I said AI, it'll be interesting to see what happens to journalists and writers for newspapers and whatever newspapers evolve into in the future. But what happens with this emergence of AI is quite the disruptor. I don't know if you have any thoughts you want to throw at me before we move on, but
and in terms of AI, yes, I mean it's a big disruptor in the media, especially in news media. I'm sure that using AI, you could concoct most of the content of a newspaper like the Globe and Mail or the Star, but given my experience and the kind of work I did at the Globe and Mail for many years, AI cannot fake a columnist's voice, a columnist's tone, and the things that a good columnist does. That is, they have, recurring jokes, lines, they create characters who come in and out of the column. AI just can't do that. A writer can.
You mentioned the Globe and Mail there. Okay, you had a long career as a TV critic at the Globe and Mail, but what is your current status? Like, you're officially retired, or how would you refer to your current status?
I am a writer. I left the Globe and Mail 3 years ago, thereabouts, and I left at the earliest opportunity, really, in part because I had other things to write. About 6 or 8 years before I left the Globe and Mail, I wrote a play. This was kind of inevitable given my background. I already mentioned my father and his time in acting, and my father encouraged me from an early age to go to the theatre. I think maybe the first time I actually saw a play was when I was 4 years old in a small town hall in Tipperary in Ireland, and I was there because my father was on the stage. My late sister also was drawn to the theatre, wrote a play that had a brief run in Dublin, and before she passed away, she had adapted 2 famous Irish short stories for the stage. So about 8 years or so ago, I decided I'm going to write a play, and I wrote it. It was submitted to just 2 or 3 people. One person hated it. One person never responded to it. But the third person was Richard Rose, who was then the artistic director at Tarragon Theatre. So he got on to me and he said, I think this play is a mess, but there is definitely something there. And I'd like us to sit down with some actors, do a reading, and let's see what happens. Let's try to take this forward. So that, since then, I've been writing for the theatre. That play that at Tarragon, we workshopped it for about 2 years, which was a wonderful experience for me. If you're a writer, even if you're, it's a newspaper columnist, you're mostly working alone. It's you in a room at a computer. If you're working in the theater, it's collaboration. And I really enjoyed the experience of going to the Tarragon, every day for a week, sitting in a room with actors, a director, right, discussing the play, and coming back a month later, doing it again. So that first play was not produced because COVID came along and shut down everything in the theater.
Right.
I revised it. It's still sitting there, and I hope it will be produced. Then I wrote a second play, which hopefully will be staged here in Toronto, probably next 27, because at the core of the play is the Irish famine crisis of 1847 here in Toronto.
Now, I'm thinking about my friend. I work closely with him. His name is Joel Greenberg.
Oh, I know Joel. Yes, I was out having a drink with Joel just a short while ago.
Well, once you said, Tarragon, and you talked about theater, I said maybe John Doyle knows Joel Greenberg. So I produced Joel's podcast, which is called Life in Stages.
I know it well.
Okay, so I produced that. He records that in this basement, so in that very seat. And the funny thing is, just yesterday we confirmed he's doing another season, and we scheduled they're all going to happen in January, February 2026. But we scheduled all the recordings of this next season, and we're going to batch record them in early 2026.
That's a wonderful coincidence.
Yeah.
I like Joel. He has been very helpful to me over the years with the 3 different plays I've written. I enjoy getting it together with him. I really like the podcast he does. I love the stories from actors who've had a long career and have lots of sharp and sometimes biting stories to tell about working in the theater and who directed them, who they clashed with, who they got along with, and the thrill of doing the theater.
Absolutely. One guest from last season who was here to do it in person, because sometimes they'll join remotely and I'll just have Joel down here, but Benedict Campbell.
Yes.
And I know his dad. Well, his dad's no longer with us, but he was a very famous actor. But his brother is a chap named Torquil Campbell, who is like one half of the founders and leaders of a band called Stars out of Montreal.
Know him well.
You know him well. You see, you know all this. Okay, I'm not telling you anything, except off the top of the great song, maybe their best song. I might like the song the best of all the great Star songs, but Your Ex-Lover is Dead.
That's a beautiful song. Yes, it's a story, it's a narrative.
And their voices work well together?
Yes, the male and female voices joining in together and separating and having different tones. That's the song that includes the taxi ride, right? If I've got the right one.
Right. It opens with Ben Campbell and Torquil Campbell's father. Was it John Campbell? What? It's a big, heavy name like that. I got to get that name right. But his big voice, because he had this great voice, saying something like this: "When there's nothing left to lose, you set yourself on fire." So I have Benedict down here, and he's chatting up here, and I'm Benedict like, this guy sounds just like his dad. It's unbelievable how much Benedict sounds like his dad. And I said, Benedict, would you do me a favor? Would you record something for me? So here's 5 seconds of Ben Campbell just after he talked to Joel Greenberg for Life in Stages.
When there's nothing left to burn, you listen to Toronto Mike.
Isn't that amazing?
That's great. That's lovely. Yes. Another part of the very talented Campbell clan is Dara Campbell, the actor. She's done a few movies, acclaimed performances. We actually attempted to tempt her to auditioning for a play that I wrote.
Well, that's such a small world, all of this.
Yeah, it is.
Actually.
It's crazy small.
And I think his name is Douglas Campbell, the patriarch of this family. Does that sound right to you? Douglas Campbell. So I think I called him like John Campbell earlier. Okay, so Douglas Campbell, who passed away in 2009. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. I have a measuring tape for you, John Doyle, that was sent over by Ridley Funeral Home, who have been pillars of this community since 1921. So you can take that home with you too.
Always useful to have.
Oh, you can never know. You got to measure something. Absolutely. So where was I going? So I just wanted to tell the world about Joel Greenberg recording a new season. One of the biggest fans of Life in Stages, and I'm encountering them all over. Like, he's going to win a podcast award next. Is Lorne Honickman, who I don't think it's a secret anymore, but he absolutely adores the theater, and he loves hearing from these actors and these directors that he knows from the Canadian theater scene, and then they get those deep dives with Joel. So shout out to Lorne Honickman. All right, questions for you, John, as we walk through this. One is, what did you take at York?
I was supposed to do a PhD in English. My alleged topic was a dissertation about modern Irish fiction by women writers, and tying that the narrative, the novels, the stories told by women writers, with changes in Irish society. That is, changes to laws about marriage, about divorce, about contraception, about the different shifts in Ireland in the 20th century, and that being reflected in fiction written by women. That dissertation did not get me.
Okay. Okay, because I'm curious how you end up at the Globe and Mail, and maybe on our way to that, we got to get to the Globe here and find out this story. But I did read somewhere when I was researching that you did work in radio and television before you started at the Globe. So I would love to know a little detail about that, if you don't mind.
Well, yes, I worked at the campus radio station at York, CHRY. Worked there for a while. I think might have been the news director for a while. I also, one of my first jobs in journalism was I was a researcher for a few months on Canada AM at CTV. Yeah, that was a temporary position. Somebody was off sick or away. But the way I fell into journalism was actually kind of odd. So I came here in 1980, and if you remember the early 1980s, there was a recession. Things were not great in Canada, and there was higher unemployment in Ontario. Things shifted. And at the time, one of the things that the provincial government of the time enacted was a rule that foreign students could not work outside of the campus that they belonged to. So, I was a TA at York, which was, for about, 7 or 8 months of the year. But because of this new regulation, I could not be like other students and work as a waiter or work in a factory, whatever, to earn money to stay alive. But there was no prohibition on doing what I decided to do, which was freelance writing. While I was at university in Ireland, I had done some things for the campus paper. And I read a lot. I read a lot of journalism. So I decided to pitch pieces written by me here in Toronto to. I began with newspapers and magazines in Ireland, in the UK, and some of that was successful because I was so. Let's say it's the 1980s. TIFF is just beginning, the Toronto Film Festival.
Oh, the Festival of Festivals.
Yes, yeah, when it was the Festival of Festivals. I was able to get, as a student journalist, I was able to get a media pass to that. I could see screenings, attend press conferences. So I could write a piece for a magazine in Ireland about a movie that, in advance of the movie coming to movie theaters in Ireland and the UK, I was able to sell pieces like that. And then when I had a portfolio of pieces done for magazines and papers over there, I was able to send that portfolio to newspapers and magazines in Canada and make suggestions about, opinion columns, whether it was about the arts, politics, whatever. But because I'd been published, I was, they were taken seriously. I got quite a few things published. Nothing paid very well, but it certainly kept me going. And what happened is that while I was freelancing, a friend of mine mentioned to me that he knew this guy who was the new editor of the TV magazine at the Globe and Mail, and I should approach him because he was looking for new writers, new voices. I did. He liked that. That man's name is John Fitzgerald, to whom I will always be very grateful. A wonderful man, a wonderful editor. And I, pretty soon after I met him and started pitching to him, I was writing every week for the Globe and Mail's TV magazine.
Is this Broadcast Week?
That was Broadcast Week is what it was called, yes. And me and Fitzgerald and some of the other contributors, we basically decided we're going to make this an important part of the Globe and Mail. We're going to make it fun. We're going to write about television in a new way. We're going to concentrate on interesting television. And we pretty much succeeded. And after a while, I was hired by Broadcast Week on a contract. I worked for about 6 months for the Globe. Then I was writing a weekly column. And eventually, I was hired full-time by the Globe and Mail, and I was working full-time at Broadcast Week. And then during the newspaper war, so you remember when the National Post was launched and the Globe, the Star, the Post were battling for readers and were willing to do new and interesting things in that period. I was made the television critic for the newspaper and writing 5 columns a week about television. But the Globe was good to me at that time. They didn't rein me in. They allowed me to sort of write about anything I felt like.
Amazing. I'm going to shout out Brad Wheeler and just if Brad's listening, I think Brad's listening. He listens to Toronto Mike. Brad came on. I co-hosted a show with Mark Hebscher called Hebsy on Sports. And Brad came on that show, but I was politely denied when I invited Brad Wheeler on Toronto Mike. So I'm just telling Brad, let's do it, buddy.
Brad's an interesting guy. I really like Brad. I like his writing. I'm glad he's still there at the Globe.
He's still there,
and he can be a very elegant writer. He can be funny. He's very good at capturing the spirit of people that he interviews.
Also, speaking of spirit, I find he's very good at some of the people I try to spotlight. Like, so when a big celebrity dies and the whole world is writing about this person, mourning this person, whatever, but there are these key Canadian figures that will pass away, and I'll look around and I'll be the only one who's sort of doing something about it. But then if you give it a little time, something beautiful from Brad Wheeler is going to show up in the Globe and Mail. Like, I think he does a great job on these obituaries.
He does, yes. He's thoughtful, and he does excellent research. And when you read Brad, you know what he's talking about.
And to pump some more Brad Wheeler tires here, I'll pick on somebody like Alexander Mayer from Attic Records, for example. Like, and I think this actually happened, that's why I'm pointing out this one, but Brad he'll listen to, Al Mayer talking to me on Toronto Mike, and in his obituary, he'll credit me. Like, a lot of people use me for research, and there's zero credit given, right? It's just something on the internet that they pulled down. But Brad Wheeler goes out of his way to make sure, as heard on Toronto Mike, or something to that effect. So I just want Brad to know I appreciate that gesture. So shout out to Brad Wheeler. Another guy, I just want to ask you, so we're going to talk a bit more about the Globe, obviously, but when you do leave in 2022, you had other things to do, but is it at all a story similar to the story David Schultz tells me, where he's in a meeting and they offer up packages, and he leaps out of his seat, like 6 feet out of his seat, and says, okay, me?
That was not my situation, no. There was no package on offer at that time. By the way, I do know Dave Schultz. Dave used to write for Broadcast Week. Back in the day, he wrote a column about sports on TV, which was always funny, much liked.
Probably talked about Hebsy.
And then, as part of my career at the Globe, I was asked to write about soccer, and I covered several World Cups, Euro tournaments, wrote a book about my travels for covering soccer, and I fell in with a gang of sports writers too, and Dave Schultz was part of that. Lovely guy, Dave.
I actually got a very interesting question for you, which I was gonna save it till I warm you up a little more here, but a question about soccer from a Canadian footy fan. Maybe I'll hit you with it right now since I've teased it here. Okay, so is it possible, Mr. Doyle, that you've been a bit tough on Canadian soccer fanatics?
I don't think so. No, I've been writing about soccer since 2001, 2002. I don't think I've been tough on that. No, what a person, or if somebody suggested this line of talk.
Well, I can quote him if you like, because this is, I didn't pay close enough attention, but a gentleman named Mike, a rather common name, that could be me, but it's not me, okay? Mike writes in, I can recall one time during an international window at the football factory where the Voyagers had an info table set up, and John Doyle stopped by just to offer his disdain for those who follow or support Canadian soccer. And he says it was not a surprise, as it was practically one of the themes of his book. He goes, I'd send in a specific question, but I can't think of a polite way of asking, why were you such a prick?
I wasn't. There is no truth to this line of questioning at all. I have long admired Canadian soccer supporters. I was writing about them when the sport was largely dismissed and reduced to like tiny coverage at the back of the sports section. The only harsh things I might have said was I recall dealing with some soccer fans. I don't remember that incident. I do remember the Voyageurs at the football factory and me going in, I think, to pick up a ticket for a Canada International that was being played at BMO Field. I don't remember expressing disdain. The one thing I might have written about that irritated people was that there certainly at one time there was an assumption that if, say, you were Italian or Portuguese and male in Toronto, that gave you immediate authority to talk about soccer. And that was something that, I disdained that. I mean, I thought that's just wrong. It's you don't have a monopoly on knowledge of soccer, on tactics, on the game itself, just because of your background. Loads of people from many, many countries are soccer fanatics, and in Toronto, being Italian or Portuguese doesn't make you an authority.
Well, I'm glad we could clear this up, John. Like, this is a good opportunity. You could stand up for yourself because I got that note and I felt it was fair game because there's nothing too personal there. Just suggesting that you, quote unquote, disdain for those who support Canadian soccer. And it's good to hear your side of that. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
I point out I've made my way up to York University to watch York United. I've seen AFC Toronto. I mean, I'm part of the soccer community in Toronto, and no, this idea of me being harsh or being a prick, no, I reject that.
And those AFC, for example, you're watching as a fan, not necessarily. You're not.
Yes,
you're not
exactly.
there to cover.
I'm not covering soccer right now. So I'm there as a fan. I'm there with the supporters. I'm there with the people singing the songs and chanting,
right,
and enjoying the game.
Beautiful. Will you possibly be enjoying any World Cup matches at the? Well, they can't call it BMO, you know.
No, they can't. It's the Canada National Soccer Stadium or something. Yeah, I've been through that before. I mean, I remember being in Portugal covering Euro 2004, and you get in a taxi and to go to the stadium, and I would use whatever the official term was that UEFA had concocted for the tournament.
Like, what are you talking about?
And the driver's like, what? Oh, you mean where Porto play? You know, I said, yeah. He said, okay. Well, I know that. You know,
That's funny.
With the World Cup, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I doubt. You know, I am tempted to offer my services to an outlet to cover some of the games here. Because I have been writing about soccer for a quarter century, and my book about soccer was a national bestseller.
Well, let me name check it here. It's The World is a Ball: The
Yes.
Joy, Madness, and Meaning of Soccer.
That's the one. Thank you for mentioning the title.
Well, you can still get this book, right? You know, and I feel like some of the casual fans will just come online for what's happening next summer in the city.
Yes. I mean, one of the things that I write about in the book is how much fun it is, like what tournaments mean in terms of the mood, the vibe, the atmosphere. I mean, how these are rare in the contemporary world to have these. When a soccer tournament is on, whether it's the Euro or the World Cup, there's something very benign about it. Everybody is suddenly engaged with the game. In the tournaments, it's a thing I say in the book is over all the tournaments I covered. And in total, I covered soccer from 17 countries on 4 continents. Ooh. I never once felt afraid. I never thought there's going to be violence here. I should get out of here. That I never had that experience. There is something gloriously benign and calming about a tournament because everybody's there to not just to support their team, but they're there to celebrate the game. And the game of soccer is one of the very few things in our world that crosses all boundaries, countries, religions. You can, it doesn't matter if you're in Iran or Iraq or in the USA and you're a soccer fan, you know the rules of the game, you know the famous players, anyone can have a conversation about soccer, and that's a really good thing.
This is not confirmed or it's not official yet, but let's say Canada faces off against Italy in the World Cup in Toronto. I'm just curious, okay, because who did I have over? Andy Petrillo, who is well known to sports followers in this. I had her. She is born here, but of Italian descent. And this is before we knew how possible this would be, right? I speculated, like, what would you do if Canada faces Italy in the World Cup? And she's completely torn. And I don't know, to me, that's disappointing. Like, she's born in Canada, has been living in Canada, but if Canada faces Italy, she's not sure she'll cheer for Canada. Like, what do you think happens in the city if that match takes place at the place that I'm going to call BMO, and FIFA can call it whatever the hell they want?
Well, what you're describing, Mike, is probably what will happen. Is that people will be torn, but in a good way, I think. I mean, because it underneath all of this is the fact that Canada is a multicultural country in which you bring the culture from your home country here, and that's okay. So, Canada, Italy, at BMO is a mouth-watering possibility. Right. And it it would be a glorious event, and one of the most historic events in the history of this city. But I would put a little warning in there. There's no guarantee that Italy will make it. Right. That the playoffs are tough. And although they might have to play, I think they will play Northern Ireland. Tiny country, not a great number of first-class soccer players, but very determined. I mean, Northern Ireland has qualified for the World Cup before, and in those playoff circumstances, all bets are off.
Right.
Now, one little footnote I'll give you. I think I'm right about this. Gattuso, who is the manager of Italy right now, he met his wife in Toronto. He was playing for, I believe, Glasgow Rangers for a brief time. They played an exhibition game in Toronto, and as part of the, the celebrations and the meet and greets and that, he met the woman who became his wife. So there are all kinds of complicated connections between Italy and Toronto.
And the Rangers, that's Alan Frew's team, am I right? From Glass Tiger. I feel like that's his team, but...
Could be. Well, if you're Scottish, it's either Celtic or Rangers.
Pretty sure it's Rangers. I know just enough to be dangerous over here when it comes to, European football. But why? Because, again, I know, like I said, legit, I'm not like Mike, who wrote in and lives and breathes, and I know he went to Qatar to see Canada play. Like, he's a diehard. I know just enough to be dangerous, but why would a country like Italy, which I always think of as a football powerhouse, why are they in such a World Cup drought here? Because they missed the last two, right? And they might miss this one. How does that happen? Because Canada in hockey isn't going to go in Olympics without. I know less countries play hockey, Mike. It's not even close. But why would Italy be in such a drought?
It's a complicated issue, Mike.
Okay. We'll need an extra hour for that one.
We'll try to cover it in a couple of minutes. I mean, Italian soccer is not the powerhouse it was. I mean, this also happens at the club level. The big teams, Juventus, AC Milan, Roma, Napoli, Lazio, are not the powerhouses of European soccer that they once were. I think there's been a certain amount of stagnation in developing soccer in Italy. I think some of the club teams rest on their laurels. They don't invest as much in bringing in young players, in having an academy to train and educate young players at the highest level. I think they're a bit backward in youth development compared to what they do in France and indeed in England these days. So I think if somebody in the organization in Italy realizes this, it can change in a decade. But right now, Italy is like a mid-level power.
Okay, interesting. But I do root for them to qualify for the World Cup because I am very excited to have Canada versus Italy here in Toronto. Like, it's almost like, pinch me, this is wild, this is happening, and that feels very big to me.
I would love to see it too.
So, come on, I mean, with all due respect to Northern Ireland, who else is in this tournament that could go through? Northern Ireland and Italy. But
Wales. Bosnia Herzegovina. That's about all I can think of off the top of my head. But this is a 48 team World Cup, and this is the biggest World Cup that's ever been. So that opens up routes to the World Cup for smaller countries, and they will take advantage of that. And if you're from a small country, the motivation to get to the World Cup is enormous. And Italy might not be able to overcome that incredible motivation, the impetus of that a tiny country has, that if they make the World Cup, I mean, they are legends.
Wow. How do you think Canada does? And I mean, specifically, will we finally win a World Cup match in 2026?
Oh, we will.
Okay.
Definitely.
I actually felt that way. I felt that way in Qatar, but again, I only know enough to be dangerous. But at least we scored a goal in Qatar.
We did score a goal. I mean, I was a bit disappointed with Canada's performance, the men's performance at the World Cup in Qatar. I'm not sure that John Herdman, who was then in charge of things, I'm not sure he planned it well. I remember, I had a speaking engagement out west on Salt Spring Island, actually. And they invited me to talk about soccer because that Qatar World Cup was coming soon.
Right.
And people were telling me, okay, Canada is going to play, Belgium and then Morocco and Croatia. And they were thinking, okay, Morocco is probably the one we can win because, well, Morocco's not a great soccer power. I remember saying at that event on Salt Spring Island, I said, our best bet is Belgium. Now, if you look simply at the rankings, Belgium would be in the top 5, and people would say, oh, that's one we should be afraid of. My take was that when Canada played Belgium at that World Cup, the Belgian players were coming off a very long season in Europe, and these are top players at top teams, and they would be the sort of team that is relying on their star power. They always take a bit of time to get the engine going at a tournament. We could have beaten Belgium, I think, at that World Cup had the tactics been a bit more forceful and shrewd. But I still, I remember the run to qualify for the World Cup under Herdman and those matches at BMO, and those were glory days.
Must-see TV.
Absolutely, every time.
Absolutely here. Quick pause to tell you, John, and all the listeners. So we're recording on December 19th, and there's a rather big holiday happening 6 days from now. It'll be Christmas, and it's not too late to go to retrofestive.ca. If you use the promo code FOTM, you save 10%. I have a quote from Google Reviews from a Francis. Francis writes, I use their online store every year, especially for cool stocking stuffers. They are well stocked and always have quick delivery. So follow Francis's lead here. Get some Christmas gifts from Canada's pop culture and Christmas store, retrofestive.ca. And if you don't want to do it online and save that 10%, you can always go to the Oakville store. So shout out to retrofestive.ca. And I also want to thank for his support Nick Iones from Fusion Corp. He stepped up to help fuel this Real Talk. So Nick, part of that Canadian Podcast Award belongs to you, brother. But Nick's got a couple of podcasts you should listen to: Building Toronto Skyline and Building Success. One guest on Building Success was a chap named Keith Stein. He's an entrepreneur. He's involved in a whole whack of cool stuff. But one of the things he's involved in is the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team that plays at Christie Pitts, and this new women's baseball league that's going to launch next year. And John, I didn't mention this off the top, but I was chatting with Keith. We have occasional conversations, and he said to me, Mike, I would love to hear John Doyle on your show. And I said, I would love to hear John Doyle on my show. And that's when I reached out. So Keith Stein was the spark. Well,
thanks to you and Keith. It's an honor to be here, and I'm enjoying myself.
Well, good. And one more piece of advice here, and then we're going to pump your tires for a bit, and then I got a few more questions. But if you, John Doyle, have old cables, old phones, old electronics, maybe you've got them in a drawer at home or in a closet, maybe you got a whole room full of them, do not throw that in the garbage, because the chemicals in those devices end up in our landfill. You need to go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code, and find out where you can drop it off to be properly recycled. So thank you, recyclemyelectronics.ca. Recyclemyelectronics.ca has confirmed they're going to support and sponsor this program for all of 2026, which is amazing. And I'll just take this opportunity to say this award-winning podcast has room for another partner. And if you're interested, please write me, Mike, at torontomike.com, and we can chat about it. Be fun to work together. So, John, I'm going to pump your tires because I pumped mine off the top. I said I won that big award last night. You won a couple of Globe and Mail awards for your writing. Is that right?
Yes, I did. These were internal awards. I was kind of like, Employee of the Year equivalents.
Well, like you get at McDonald's. You're,
Yeah. No, well, one was a writing award, which in journalism, and certainly inside the Globe, is prestigious, and I was honored to write it. Funnily enough, that was 2006, and in part, I was given that award because I had, at that point, I covered 3 soccer tournaments. I covered the World Cup in Japan and South Korea 2002, Euro 2004 in Portugal, and the World Cup in Germany in 2006. Shortly afterwards, one of the top managers at the Globe decided I shouldn't be writing about soccer at all, which was odd, but because she was a senior figure in the paper, the editor sort of went along with her. So I went through this strange period where I would. At that point, I had a contract to write a book about soccer, which was going to come out in 2010, and I had a budget for travel and everything. So I would send a note to the sports desk saying, next week I'm going to be in Europe. I'm going to Slovakia, where Slovakia will play the Czech Republic. They used to be the same country.
Well, yeah,
they
that's
have to
quite
play
dimension.
each other to qualify for the World Cup. Are you interested in a piece about that? And well, no, John, no, it's okay. We'll just take wire for that. So then I would go and cover it for the New York Times. It was a very odd period. By coincidence, when that decision came down that I really shouldn't be writing about soccer because it was not my job. My job was to write about television.
Right.
I had just got a note from the New York Times, from an editor at the New York Times, to say, hey, I've been reading your writing about soccer. You're good. I love the way you do it, the style you do it at. This is just a note from an admirer. So when that decision that came down that I shouldn't really be writing about soccer for the Globe, I contacted the New York Times, and in 72 hours they said, okay, you're on board.
Wow.
What's your angle for I was just about to go to England to watch England play World Cup qualifying game, I think against Uzbekistan, and the Times wrote to me and said, okay, what's your angle for that piece, and what time will we see it? So I wrote dozens of pieces about soccer for the New York Times before I came back to writing about it for the Globe, when the person who had sort of banned me moved on.
Right. Well, let me ask you, this might be a question you get asked frequently, I would think, when people talk with John Doyle, but it's been well publicized that there was a beef with Fox News at the time. Anyways, he was at Fox News, Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah.
So finally, I have John Doyle on the program to speak to this. What do you remember about the Bill O'Reilly beef?
It was a strange and at the time weird, but weirdly thrilling. At that point, there was a move in the broadcasting industry in Canada to make Fox News available in Canada, and there was a lot of talk about this. I had seen Fox News in the States, and when I went to LA for work, you watch Fox News in the hotel room, and you could easily find a lot of Fox content online, on YouTube and that.
Right.
So I began writing about Fox News, and in a gentle but mocking way, saying there's nothing to be afraid of if Fox News comes to Canada. You really, your best response is to laugh, because so much of it is extreme. And Canadians, I don't think will be big fans of Fox News because we're not that kind of people. Bill O'Reilly, who then was like pretty much number one on Fox News, he picked up on this because I guess Fox News at the time was thinking, we're going into Canada, we have to prepare for this. So O'Reilly came across what I'd written and on air started answering me and saying, John Doyle, a crank at the far left Globe and Mail newspaper in Canada is saying that Canadians will laugh at Fox News. Well, get over yourself. That's kind of stuff that Fox News still does.
Right.
So I started getting, some of his fans found me online. I started getting hundreds of emails from Fox viewers, Bill O'Reilly fans, telling me I'm an asshole, I'm a jerk, what do Canadians know about anything? I sort of kept up this little battle, and I wrote about the fact that I was getting this ugly mail from Fox viewers, and O'Reilly responded to that. And this went on for about 2 weeks. I wasn't writing about it every day, but then what happened is that I remember it was a Thursday, and I got a call in my office of the Globe and Mail from the New York Times saying, from one of the senior editors there saying, I've been following this battle between you and Bill O'Reilly at Fox, and really it's a fascinating story because it sort of delineates the difference between Canada and the United States. Will you share some of the hate mail you've got? And I said, yes. So I spent most of that Thursday working with a senior guy at the New York Times, filtering, the hate mail and some of my reactions to it, sent it to him. And that ended up as a feature in the Sunday New York Times.
Wow.
With a big, big readership.
Yes.
And what was funny out of that was, as soon as that New York Times piece appeared, I started getting thousands of emails from Americans who had read the piece in the New York Times to say, we're so sorry. Yeah. Really, we're sorry. Don't think that Fox News fans and Bill O'Reilly are representative of Americans. They're not, Mr. Doyle. Really, they're not. So, it became this, international situation.
Right.
I think this was before everybody was on the internet, and
well, it's before Twitter.
Before Twitter, yes. So if it happened today, it would be a big international incident. But for those days, it was big enough, and a lot of people suddenly heard about me, thanks to Bill O'Reilly and thanks to the New York Times.
Well, everybody loves a good fight, right? So it's like this is good for all parties involved, I suppose. But you've never met Bill O'Reilly, have you?
No, I haven't. And of course, Bill O'Reilly eventually left Fox News under a cloud, you might say.
I do recall. Also, people probably today, at least, people probably know Bill O'Reilly best from the "fuck it, I'll do it live," which I think is great.
Yeah, he's still around. I'm not sure he's made the comeback he would have liked, but yeah, he's still around. He's a voice out there in the in the cranky right-wing American news media.
And we knew him as the hard copy guy. Anyways, that's how I knew him, as the hard copy guy here. So since we're going through a couple of the controversies, in 2010, you argued that the Giller Prize and the Gemini Awards were elitist. Do you still feel that way? Although they're not called Geminis anymore.
Did I actually use the word elitist?
Let me see. I can go to the source, but what do you recall? What do you recall?
I think what happened with the Giller Awards, which annoyed the people who run the family who run the Giller Awards. What I said was that it was terrible television. It was as simple as that. I mean, it was a great boost for the Giller, for the awards, and for the books and authors nominated, that it was on television. But when the show actually happened, not just as a critic, but as a TV watcher, as a consumer, I thought, this is really badly done. And they should put more effort into having a show that's fun, that's informative. It was very stagey. It was staid. And I simply argued that if you're going to put a book award show on television, then make it lively, make it better. The Gemini Awards, well, the Gemini became the Canadian Screen Awards.
Yes.
And
They merged it with the Genies, right?
Yes. And I do remember that period because when it was the Gemini Awards, it too was, I mean, for a television award show, it wasn't very entertaining. It was staid, and it was sort of the usual suspects. And actually, we talked earlier about our mutual friend Bill Brio. Bill and I and a couple of Canadian actors were approached on the QT by the Academy that ran the Geminis and the Film Awards and that. And we had a chat with them, and Bill and I suggested, put the Geminis and the Film Awards, put them together, have Screen Awards, just make it, at that point, Canadian TV stars would have been bigger than Canadian movie stars. So use television to boost the movies and, have as much star power as you can. But again, make it entertaining. Because the Gemini Awards often did come across as a very, dour CBC production.
Well, they took your advice.
They did.
They
did.
listened.
Well, it made sense. It made total sense for them too.
Okay, very interesting. Now, this one's a bit more sensitive, but I actually myself, and I've recorded 1,800 and something episodes, but there has been times in the past where I've used a term that I thought meant something, and then somebody's felt it meant something else, but I was completely ignorant. So, ignorance, legit ignorance. But I'm curious about the fallback. So, the Great Canadian Baking Show, you called Dan.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Levy, Eugene Levy's son. The term you used was fey, F-E-Y, fey. And Levy argued, and a CBC critic as well, that that's a homophobic term. So, what do you think of the word fey being used as a homophobic term?
Well, that's two questions in one.
Yeah. Well, you separate them.
I remember that incident, and there was a whole context for it. I probably shouldn't have used the word. As to whether it's literally and emphatically homophobic, I don't think so. I mean, people can argue that, but in the general population, I don't think everybody would agree with that. I wrote many hundreds of columns. You write 5 columns a week for 10 months of the year. You're going to make mistakes. That column, like others, went through 2 editors at the Globe and Mail on the desk. Neither one flagged anything in that column. And Dan Levy then went. It began with his sister. Levy went overboard about that column. And the context there is that the very first episode of Schitt's Creek was sent to me when Schitt's Creek was debuting on CBC. And I think I was only sent 1 episode, which is odd. But in Canada, that happens. Usually you get, 3, 4 to 6 episodes, whatever. It was only sent 1. And I watched it, and I didn't like it. I thought, as most people realize now, the early episodes of Schitt's Creek
I didn't like
were
episode
bad.
1 either. In fact,
No.
I've taken a couple of runs at this program, and I nope out pretty quick because it doesn't feel like a great show off the top. I don't know.
Well,
I'm told it gets better.
It wasn't. It was a pretty poor show at the beginning, and what I said in my review was, this is a one-joke show. I mean, that it seems to be, there's just one joke, and there's all this stuff around it, but it's really just one joke. It was a negative review. Dan Levy was furious. And after that review appeared, an odd thing happened. I got an email from a senior CBC executive And it took me a minute to realize what was going on. It was because it was from our personal email account. It wasn't a CBC account, telling me how upset Dan Levy was about the review, and that, I maybe I was too harsh and I should be aware of how upset he was. I think that from then onwards, Dan Levy had it in for me. He was going to damage me in some way if he could. And, when you write for a newspaper, you have a pulpit, you have a voice, but you're also vulnerable. You are very vulnerable putting yourself out there. And you're particularly vulnerable, I think, to powerful families. And in Canada, a lot of power rests with certain families. I remember, this is a sidebar to this,
Sure.
I remember writing about Ben Mulroney when he began hosting television. And if you wrote anything negative about Ben Mulroney,
Canadian Idol.
Yes, Canadian Idol. If you wrote anything negative about it, the editor heard from Brian Mulroney, from the former Prime Minister. And that, that can scare some editors. In the case of Levy, it was his whole family. His sister got on to my editor at the Globe to tell my editor how upset Dan Levy's mom was, his dad, and then friends of Levy's started agitating online. And really, it wasn't about a word in the column. It was about putting the newspaper guy in his place.
But if you could go back in time, you might use a different term than Faye.
Oh, sure. But, if you write... if you broadcast like you do, you make mistakes.
At least you can edit. I refuse to edit Toronto Mike. This is both the greatest thing about it and the worst thing about it.
Well, yes. I mean, but
But you said it. It was the editors didn't flag it or whatever happens in the newspaper world here. Okay.
And I was never asked to apologize or explain or anything. The newspaper was a bit spooked by the number of people around the Levy family who were agitating about me. But that was the end of that. You move on. You write the next column.
One of your columns. At the end of a year, and we're in the end of 2025 here, but you would write about the 10 most irritating Canadians.
Oh, yes. That was fun.
Do you think you were too hard on the Canadian Tire guy? We don't have him around anymore, but the Canadian Tire guy was a fixture, especially at this time of year.
Well, that was always a fun column to write. And it wasn't, the top 10 most irritating Canadians, television related.
Right.
That always was not just me. Before that list appeared, when readers would contact me, and I was very proud of the fact that, I stayed in touch with readers, and they phoned, they emailed. I always tried to keep in contact with people and ask people, what shows are you watching? Like, how many channels do you have? Have you seen this? To get information from real people, readers. So when readers would contact me, whether it was asking, should I invest in getting that cable channel? What do you think, Mr. Doyle? And I would ask people, well, what's the most irritating thing about TV right now? What really irritates you? I mean, are there commercials that you hate?
Right.
And a whole bunch of people said, that Canadian Tire guy.
He was polarizing.
He is just, if I see that guy one more time, I just turn down the volume. I want to change the channel.
100%.
Yeah. So, I don't think I was harsh on him.
No, my tongue was in my cheek with that one. I thought coming off the heavy Dan Levy talk there, maybe Canadian Tire guy, because absolutely I wrote about him on my little blog, but the Canadian Tire seemed like he was just in your face all the time. And this is a time, looking back, when I would see ads. The only ads I see now are when I watch live sports.
Well, it's true. Yes. I mean, there's a whole different vibe about television now. It used to be that commercials where there were commercials that everybody saw, and you could make conversation with people who you didn't really know about. Oh, that awful commercial!
Because everyone watched ER last night.
Yes, Yeah, those were the days. Yeah, yeah.
Those were the days. Oh, we just lost Meathead. My goodness gracious. What a tragedy that was, Rob Reiner.
Yes. A great man as an artist, as an actor, as a director.
Did you meet him?
No, I've never met him. I've been in the same room with him when I was the television critic for the Globe, and I would go to Los Angeles for the press tours that were usually on twice a year, and I would usually go to one of them. Those were good events. You learned a lot as a writer, as a consumer about television, the industry, and you also got to meet people, who create television,
right.
The bosses who run networks and streamers and that, and I'm pretty sure Reiner was a speaker at one of those events.
Now, so you're obviously retired from the Globe and Mail as their television critic in 2022. We talked about that earlier, but I know many I'm going to use my words carefully, many a great writer in this market that took a package and quote unquote retired. Okay, I'm now thinking of people that were like Ben Rayner, for example. They were and Peter Howell. These are a couple of guys who've been over here. Ben's going to be on the show 2 weeks from now. We're going to catch up with Ben Rayner, who's in the Maritimes right now living. But these are chaps who did resurface in their paper, the Toronto Star, as freelancers. Like, so will we still read John Doyle in the Globe and Mail?
I doubt it, to be honest with you, Mike. The Globe hasn't, been in touch with me to say, could you write a few things for us or anything? And newspapers are strange beasts. I know you mentioned Ben Rayner. I know Ben. I used to see Ben. Okay, a big soccer fan,
Yes.
Toronto FC fan. He and I would occasionally go to a bar and watch Toronto FC play if they weren't playing at home. Peter Howell too. The Star, I think, at a certain point realized that they had let go or gotten rid of some key people. Peter Howell being, near the top of that list, a first-rate movie critic, a good writer. Ben also on the topic of music. So the Star brought some people back. The Globe isn't that kind of paper. All newspapers are different, but newspapers can be slightly crazy places where there are feuds, arguments, there were hate-ons. I wrote a very popular column for the Globe and Mail, but there were people who did not like the fact that the TV critics column was often the most read thing in the paper.
Right.
I remember one instance being told about this by a senior editor at the Globe. I had picked up on a show called Outlander, which was based on a series of very popular novels. And I had seen the pilot for it when I was in Los Angeles, and I was impressed. I knew this is a different kind of show. It's a romance, but it's also there's something going on here that's really tricky, but it grabs you. And I wrote about during that trip to LA when I saw the Outlander pilot. I put something online, probably on Twitter, saying I've just seen a really good pilot for Outlander. And within an hour, I got replies. I got replies from New Zealand. I got replies from Australia. And these were from people who were fans of the books and were anxious to know about the TV version.
Right.
So I wrote, I think when it actually aired then, I wrote a column about Outlander and I praised it. Word went around among Outlander fans that there was this piece in the Globe and Mail in Canada about the show. That was the most read piece in the paper. And I was told by a senior editor that when she went into the morning meeting at the Globe and Mail, where all of the department heads gather and the editor-in-chief is there and they're setting the news agenda for the day, the first thing the editor-in-chief said when he went into the meeting was, "What is Outlander, and why is John Doyle's column the most read thing in my paper?" So, there will be people who will resent you because...
Well, you're not on their speed dial at this point, perhaps. Okay, well, I got to say, one thing that you did allude to, but we didn't name it. I feel like we should name it, is A Great Feast of Light, Growing Up Irish in the Television Age. You wrote that. You published that. That was your first book. You published that in 2005, and it's about your life in conservative rural Ireland. Little early to write that memoir, I would think.
I'm proud of that book. I think it's a good book. People I've come across recently in the theater world who, do a bit of research on me, come across A Great Feast of Light and read it, come to me and say, it's a lovely book, it's beautifully done. It's a memoir, but it's about a specific time. I mean, it's essentially about the 1960s and early 70s in Ireland at the time when television arrived, and television changed Irish society dramatically.
Urge the listenership to check that out. How was your Great Lakes beer? Was it tasty?
It is excellent. It's a lovely, crisp Pilsner type beer. I'm enjoying it.
So you got the premium lager, but I will shout out, they have a super light lager, which is also tasty, but it's only like 3.2% alcohol or something. So it's a lot lighter. And much love to Great Lakes. And I'm going to send you home with that beer there. And on our way out here, I want to just tell you that I thoroughly enjoyed the chat with you, John Doyle. I love this.
Thank you, Mike. I thoroughly enjoyed it too. It's a treat to talk to somebody like yourself who apparently knows all of these people that I know.
Well, listen, it's a small world out there. I didn't even bring up like Antonia or Rob Salem and all these other cats I've had over talking about the scene.
People I know. I hope Rob Salem is doing well.
I saw him at the Ron James stand-up I was at 2 weeks ago. Him and Rita were there. And they're both in this. They're both in the, because Rita Zekas hasn't actually been on Toronto Mike. She was going to be and she didn't make. But Rob is bringing her over here in January.
Oh, good.
There you go.
Glad to hear it.
He's a big Superman fan. I hope you know that. Okay, so thank you, John Doyle. Love it. We're going to take a photo by Toronto Tree in a moment, and I'm going to get your lasagna. This was great fun. And that brings us to the end of our 1,822nd show. It only took me 1,822 shows to get to John Doyle from the Globe and Mail, so it was all worth it. Go to TorontoMike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Much love to all who made this possible. Again, that's Retro Festive, Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, Nick Ieni's, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, and Ridley Funeral Home. Monday is the annual Christmas Crackers episode with Retro Ontario's own Ed Conroy. See you all then.